Hey, what's going on everybody? My name is Jay and welcome to the Shiplife. So for today's video, I thought we'd go ahead and address the elephant in the room. Well, the topic we're talking about today is actually bigger than an elephant. We're talking about a cruise ship, the entire cruise ship industry in fact. So unfortunately, right as we sail into the year 2022, we have received some devastating and unfortunate news that has shocked everybody. Both a cruise ship builder and a major cruise company have filed for bankruptcy. The cruise ship builder is known as MV Werften, headquartered in Germany, and the cruise company is Genting, headquartered over in Hong Kong. Now, Genting is a parent company to other smaller cruise lines like Star Cruises, Dream Cruises, and Crystal Cruises, who have all been directly affected by the bankruptcy. They also own cruise ships like the Global Dream that is currently under construction over at MV Werften. And then on top of that, we have another cruise ship like the Crystal Symphony that has been issued a warrant for its arrest, a cruise ship, which will probably end up being the craziest ocean police chase the world has ever seen. Now, taking all this crazy news into consideration, I believe this raises a very important question, which is going to be the topic for today's video. If a cruise line like Genting Hong Kong, as well as its subsidiaries, could all go into bankruptcy, what does this mean for the rest of the cruising industry here in 2022? Let's talk about it in today's video. So in order to answer this major question, I believe that sometimes in life, you gotta go back in order to move forward. So let's rewind the clock about 2 years or so to March of 2020 at the start of the pandemic. Now, at the time, nobody really knew what was going on. However, we did have the serious situation with the Diamond Princess, which unintentionally kind of put the entire cruise ship industry in the limelight when they had a record-breaking 700 positive COVID cases on board, which resulted, unfortunately, in about 14 deaths. Now, things kept getting worse. We saw more Princess cruise lines that have a lot of positive cases on board. We saw Royal Caribbean ships, Carnival, so on and so forth. This unfortunately made the entire cruise ship industry come to a screeching halt, with things being implemented as far as policies, for example, like the no sail order with the CDC in the United States. What was supposed to be nothing more than a brief pause in operations, essentially just a blip on the radar for the cruise ship industry, where they would pause operations for about a month or two, ended up turning into a major nightmare and something nobody predicted. They would come to a screeching halt for a whopping 18 months. Now, they wouldn't resume operations until June or summertime of 2021, but by that time the damage had already been done. Now, during this process, in the span of 18 months, we would see things happen like crew members getting laid off for an undetermined amount of time. We'd see both passengers and crew getting stuck on board cruise ships for months on end due to the fact that, of course, everybody was scared of the pandemic, and home ports and ports of call just simply would not take any cruise ships because of fear that they would have COVID positive people on board and spread it to people on land. And then after that, we began to see cruise lines like CMV Travel and Pullman Tour, which Royal Caribbean owns 50% of, go bankrupt. After that, we'd see major cruise lines being affected like Carnival. They would then be scrapping and selling ships like the Carnival Fantasy and the Carnival Imagination. And things just continue to progress onward during this horrible time in the world for the cruising industry. Throughout the span of March 2020 through June 2021, the cruise ship industry sent about $300 million worth of cruise ships straight over to the scrapyard. That way they could recuperate any little bit of money that was possible to obtain. Now, if we fast forward to where we are right now, we can also assume that with the cruise ship industry essentially restarting operations about 6 months or so ago, yes, they've made money back, but they've also lost billions and billions from a global standpoint as far as revenue. Now, with them only being in operation for the past 6 months, we could assume also with the implementation of very costly health and safety protocols like limited occupancy, the testing that's required on board these cruise ships that they're also providing, and things like masking on board, air filters, all that stuff that's required for them to resume operations, I think it's safe to say that they probably haven't made that money back that they lost. You also have to take into consideration the massive amount of future cruise credit that a lot of passengers are using during this restart in operations, which is obviously going to cut into the profits even more for the entire cruise ship industry. Also, look at the fact that a lot of the crew members, well, most of them in fact during the pause in operations during the span of 2020 and 2021, were sent home and then brought back. This is extremely costly for the cruise line, especially when you consider all this happened in a global scale. There's also the reality of the quarantine hotels, which have been required required by all the cruise lines before the crew members even get on board the cruise ships to begin their quarantine inside one of their cabins. They also have to stay anywhere from a week to 2 weeks inside a quarantine hotel, which also eats into profits. And then finally, you have to take into consideration the recent round of cancellations that we've seen, which inevitably are costing the cruise lines more in future cruise credit and refunds, which means they are making very little money in comparison to pre-pandemic. So finally, let's go ahead and answer the big question that everybody wants to know. Is this potentially the start to the end for the entire cruise ship industry? Well, the short answer is no. You see, when it comes to cruising, you guys have to understand that even in this troubling time where a lot of cruise lines are not making money, they do have options. The first of which being that if they don't have money and they want to try to recuperate money or save some money, they could sell some of these ships. We saw that with Carnival with their older ships and smaller ships. They were doing this last year. A lot of cruise lines have a lot of ships in their fleets that potentially aren't as big as moneymakers as the mega ships that some of them have, especially with the big three being Royal Caribbean, NCL, and Carnival. Now, of course, not every single cruise line can just sell off ships. Some will unfortunately go bankrupt if things continue down this path, just like we've seen with Genting Hong Kong. Now, does this mean anything bad? Yes, it's unfortunate for the cruise lines. However, I believe stuff like this does create opportunity, whether it be the Great Depression or the housing market crash we saw back in 2008. If people are prepared like some of these cruise lines are, it does create opportunity. Big buying opportunities. For a lot of these cruise lines, some of them do have a lot of capital in the bank, and should a cruise line go under, the cruise line has two options. Either they can sell that ship to another cruise line or a company that is probably going to start a cruise line, or the ship is going to go to the scrapyard. However, we prefer the alternative that somebody buys this. So if we see, let's say the bigger guys, for example, like your Carnival, NCL, and Royal Caribbean, even if they sell these ships and they don't go to the scrapyard, they could potentially be selling it to a new up-and-coming cruise line that may come out and eventually be a bigger guy later down the road in about a decade or so. Well, maybe even longer. It just depends. However, I do believe this is nothing more than an opportunity. I also believe in fair and true capitalism, and that's if a company goes under because they didn't manage things right, and also you got to take into consideration the horrible situation being the pandemic that we're dealing with. But if they go belly up, it's up to them. I believe in a fair and free market, and should a cruise line go under and somebody buys them out or whatever the case is, it is what it is. But do I think the entire industry is going to go under? Heck no. I love cruising. Everybody loves cruising. We love traveling, and cruising is by far one of the cheapest and safest ways to travel. People will continue to do this long after this pandemic is over, unless the world happens to end in like a giant meteor shower or something. I don't know. Either way, I do want to end this video off by saying that I am very supportive of the cruise ship industry. I'm very confident of the cruise ship industry. Are we going through some rough waters right now? Yeah, definitely, without a doubt. Are we potentially going to see more cruise casualties? It's a possibility if things continue to stay this way, but cruising is here and it's here to stay. Anyway, guys, if you have any alternative thoughts or you want to comment, please do so down in the comment section below. I'd really love to hear your feedback because I do read all of your comments. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share this video because it goes a long way in support of my channel. I appreciate all of you, and I see you in the next one. Take it easy.